Well, ladies and gentlemen, what a pleasure to see you all here. I'm sure you share my feeling that you've been planning something for a long time, and you've got all sorts of names on a list, etc., etc. You never really believe that there is a human being behind all these email addresses and Excel sheets, but here you are. Most of you very alive, it seems to me, so I think we have some interesting times ahead of us. Thank you very much for joining us for this conference on social services in times of disaster. There are so many aspects to reactions to disaster. From the geophysical side all the way over to maybe the psychological trauma, the long-lasting effects on the communities. And it's quite certain that the task of social services in times of disasters is very important. And that is definitely something that needs to be prepared in advance. In this country, we made a study some years ago, published in 2008, with a report that dealt with how do you actually help communities recover after a disaster. And we found out that, in fact, Iceland is quite well prepared when it comes to the first response, search and rescue. And even in many communities, the preparation is quite good, and the people, the citizens, are well prepared and take part in drills and so forth. But actually, what happens in the weeks and then months and years after a disaster, it's much less prepared. And so we think that it's very relevant to look at this part of the chain that needs to be so strong. And in cooperation with the Nordic Welfare Watch, we have called on this seminar with you all. I represent Nordres, which I will introduce, where my colleague Guðni Björk Eydal, professor, has welcomed you as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Guðrún. I'm also very happy to see you all here today on this sunny day. We haven't had many of those during the spring, but the sun came out for you. And I'm just going to, in very few words, present the project of the Nordic Welfare Watch, so we all know why we are here. And the project is, as it says, they're part of the Icelandic Presidency Program for 2014, and it's a 2-year program. And it's a part of the program for Hulbar Nordisk Velferð program for nýju velferðslösningar til mennesker í Norden. I don't know how to translate that, but you all understand, I hope. And the Nordic Welfare Watch, the program itself here in Iceland, is divided into 3 parts. First, it's the Nordic Welfare Watch in response of crisis, and that's our project and why we are here today. And then there are 2 additional projects that we are going to join forces with by the end of the 2-year period. The second one is the welfare consequences of the financial crisis, because we really would like to review our solutions in all the Nordic countries during, tracing back to the 1990s, where we had the big crisis in Finland and Sweden, and then look into our responses to crisis since then, and try to learn from each other what has really worked out and what could we do better. And then the third project also speaks into this idea of how we could be better prepared. And there the idea is to make welfare indicators. So we could be reading much previously than we can do today if we see a problem on the horizon in the statistics. And we are going to do our part by doing 4 smaller projects. First of all, we're going to examine the emergency response plans amongst the Nordic nations, and in particular look into the social services. And what we want to do is to learn if the social services are included in the emergency planning, and if they are, what roles do they have, and what could they be doing? And the big question is, of course, if we could do better and learn from each other again. So it's very much in line with the thinking of the project in itself. And just because the people is, of course, the most important part of the project, we have a steering committee that is actually conducting the project, writing the big reports that we are going to deliver. And on the picture you see the steering committee, Tapio Salonen, Karen Björngren, who is present. Maybe you wave when I say your names. Yeah. Rasmus Dahlberg, sitting in the back. Merja Rappeli, yes, in the front. And Björn Winden, yes. And then we're missing Tapio Salonen, who couldn't be with us today. And you've all been corresponding, I guess, with Ingibjörg Lilja Ómarsdóttir, who is entering the room right now. Maybe we should applaud her for all her hard work for the preparation of the conference. We also have, and now I'm not going to read the names, I just wanted you to see how many people are then behind each country leader, because we have advisory committees, people where we can seek advices and help from. And this is the Danish, Finnish. I guess you're all very fast readers, so just roll your eyes through the slides. The Icelandic one, the Norwegian one, and the Swedish one. And we're very happy to say that almost all of the advisory committees are here today, and we're extremely happy that they could all participate. As you see from the names, these are people from different sectors, from different partners, both from research and from the field, doing research projects there. So we really look forward to be able to seek knowledge from this wide and excellent panel of experts. Just to use the opportunity to make an announcement. We want to be reaching out, of course, doing things in other contexts as well. And this is an open call that I hope that you will all look further into. I and Karen are organizing this session at a conference where Björn is in charge. And this is the Research Committee for Disaster Sociology. And I encourage you all to look into it, because it's a huge network of experienced scholars, and we hope to be able to learn from them and maybe present our preliminary research in 2016. And finally, our project is also connected to NURDRES, because we are doing one of the work packages in NURDRES and cooperating like we are here today, because we have joined forces and we are doing this symposium together. And now Guðrún will tell you more about the Center of Excellence, NURDRES. Thank you.
Thank you, Guðný. Yes, I'll just briefly tell you a little bit about NURDRES. NURDRES is a new Nordic Center of Excellence on societal security. And Nordforsk funds it, and they sent out a call in 2013, I think. My goodness, time flies. Announcing or opening for a call for applications from every interested group in the Nordic countries to join forces to tackle societal security from all possible aspects. Cyber security, pandemics, terrorists, and so forth. Now, luckily, Iceland doesn't have much experience with that kind of security issues, and I hope that we will never have. But we do have experience when it comes to natural disasters. And so we decided to go for it, and we collected a group of excellent experts in the other Nordic countries so that we all supplement each other, and out of that came a project with 15 participating institutions in all the Nordic countries. And we got the grant, quite a substantial 23 million Norwegian kroner grant. I hope that the Norwegian krona will stop falling. Women, can you do something about that? It's amazing how quickly it falls when the sums are so large, you know. Better to have small grants if the currency is stable. That is something Icelanders know a lot about. Unstable currency, ask us. But anyway, we have planned a 5-year project consisting, of course, of many work packages. Our focus is societal resilience after natural disasters. And we look at resilience from individuals, communities, institutions, and infrastructure. And to name some examples, when we look at individuals, we look at how do people actually cope with natural disasters, what are the health effects, for instance, of avalanches or of volcanic eruptions or flooding or other things. What are the effects on the individual? Who actually copes well and who are the ones that are vulnerable? We particularly look at children with expertise from Norway on how to support children after disasters. And we look at the long-term health effects, for instance, of the Eyjafjallajökull eruption in 2010 and of snow avalanches that were very seriously fatal in small communities in this country and so forth. So focus on the individual and the coping abilities of individuals. Then we look at communities. The informal communities. What makes a community resilient? How does the community actually perceive the danger? How do they understand the messages? When you're sending out some warning or requests to people to behave in one way or another, how do you address them? Do you address a 17-year-old in the same way as his grandmother? You might be able to put an announcement on what we call the old steamer, which is Guðvann, the national radio program 1, which I listen to, but nobody under the age of I don't know what listens to that. So if you want to reach a 17-year-old, certainly don't reach him through Guðvann, but you might reach him through something else, social media, for instance. So we will look into how do people actually perceive the messages. We will also look into the new opportunities that open up with the fact that everybody virtually carries around a mini computer these days. Everyone, almost, has a smartphone. And the smartphone contains a video camera, easily nowadays, even GPS. And we can actually recruit the general public to help monitor danger. For instance, increasing water levels in a river or a lake, or forest fires. And people can actually send in the information to the centers that are in charge. But this cannot be done without the proper channels being defined and the proper receiving mechanism, and really trying to recruit some people so we have sort of barefoot monitors out there. It's not very good for the centers to receive maybe 5 million messages with lots and lots and lots of pictures and ambiguous messages of all sorts. This needs to be somehow channeled. So that's another thing that we want to look into. I don't want to take too much time. Let me just mention briefly that we look at the infrastructure. Infrastructure is, of course, all sorts of things, but we will focus on transport. And we will look at mudslides and avalanches and how they affect transport, how roads need to be built, how railways need to be underpinned to take such threats. where the areas are that are under threat. There, Norway is extremely strong, and they lead that kind of work. But we will also look at floodings, and there we look at southern Sweden and of Denmark. Copenhagen, of course, has a recent experience with severe flooding. We definitely need to do something about that, our preparation and reaction to flooding. And we will also look, and we always feel a bit ashamed, the Icelanders, when mentioning the effect of volcanic ash on air transport. I need not remind you of the 2010 embarrassing situation when Europe was completely taken by surprise with that volcanic event, but we do know that this can happen again, and to a much greater extent, unfortunately. And it's not enough to know how are we going to tackle it if it happens of the size that Eyjafjallajökull was in 2010. We have a very pregnant volcano in the south, Katla. Much more impressive, I'm afraid. And that could last longer and be much more far-reaching, but then you never know what kind of ash is going to come out. It may be heavy and get suspended close to the origin, never making it out of the country really, but then it can be very fine-grained, like happened in 2010, and travel very widely. And in the late 1700s, we had the Lakagír eruption, which affected Japan, and some say caused the French Revolution, because the grape harvest didn't mature properly and there was no red wine. But don't quote me on that cause of the French Revolution. But anyway, that's another. And then last but not, well, there is one very interesting part too that I must mention that has to do with transport, and that is the challenges that are opening up in the Arctic. The ice is melting, as we know, faster than anybody expected, and that in itself causes quite some concern, but one of them is that waters are opening up to traffic that were closed before. And these waters are not necessarily very safe waters. There may be a lot of drift ice there. It poses a challenge for all transport, not least for cruises. Travel companies are planning cruises for large vessels that may carry maybe, say, 4,000 passengers and 2,000 crew or something, 6,000 people, and they sail into these pristine waters, and everybody is very excited about being alone up there, not seeing any sign of civilization anywhere, until you hit an iceberg. And for us who are quite close to this area, it's really a major concern. Who is going to help these people if something happens to a cruise with 6,000 people on board? Well, we've got 1.5 helicopters, and they won't reach that far. And Greenland doesn't have very much either. So what are we going to do about it? And an important part of our project, and a very interesting work package that Rasmus back there is really bearing the burden of, deals with these challenges in the Arctic. And then I want to mention finally the institutions. That has to do with the legal framework of disasters. What is the legal framework around that in the countries, the Nordic countries? Is it similar or is it different? How are insurances organized? And what about land use planning? Are you allowed to build anywhere? In our country, we have the pressure from so-called developers who want to develop land into building lots. And people like to build their house in a location with a beautiful ocean view, for instance, but that may be a dangerous place. So what are the regulations? regarding that. What do the other countries do? How can we improve our position here? And the last VP has to do with what we're doing today. It is really the place and the role of social services in times of disaster. In particular, the welfare system. Is the welfare system allowed to, equipped to, take part in the rebuilding after a disaster, or is it not? And if it is not, what comes instead? A large emphasis is placed on training and mobility in Nordres. We set aside quite a big lump of money to host seminars like this in cooperation with others. So it's really like a mobile academy, the Nordic Societal Security Academy. It doesn't live anywhere. The courses may be held all over the place. Where there are interesting topics and interesting people that want to carry them out, then we help fund them. And that goes for this seminar here today. This is the first seminar being held after Nordres was born on January 1st. So I welcome you. You are our firstborn. Very nice to be here with you.